The blazing heat of the summer stretched long over the land, suffocating everything in its path. The dry grasses crackled beneath his feet as he moved across the savanna, checking the herd of goats he had carefully raised and tended. For days, he had lived with the knowledge that food was abundant, stored safely for the long, relentless season. He had enough to survive. Goats, vegetables, and tubers lined the inside of his shelter. He had prepared well, as he always did, anticipating the harsh heat. The days passed in their usual rhythm, nothing extraordinary. The tubers he dug, the goats he milked, the fire that burned at the center of his life for warmth and light. It was a pattern, a methodical cycle that gave him the illusion of control over the harsh world around him. But today would change everything. A sharp gust of wind stirred the dry air, and he saw at first a faint trail of smoke on the horizon. He had seen smoke before, but this was different. The wind shifted, and the smoke thickened, darkened, and began to billow toward him. The land, already parched and brittle from the long dry season, was suddenly at the mercy of a raging wildfire. It spread quickly, faster than he could flee. Panic rose in his chest. He turned and ran toward the shelter, but the fire was already too close. The goats scattered, bleating in terror as the flames swept toward them. His heart clenched as he watched them run, some toward the fire, others further into the wilderness, unable to outrun the inferno. By the time he had taken shelter on higher ground, all that was left of his herd were the faint glows of the burning animals far below. His goats, his livelihood consumed by the flames. He stayed hidden, watching helplessly as the wildfire raged, its power consuming the land. For hours the sky was filled with smoke, thick and suffocating, until finally the fire began to fade, its fury spent. He ventured out cautiously, his mind still reeling. As he walked through the ruins of what had once been his home, he came upon something unexpected, the charred remains of a small animal caught in the fire's wrath. A herbivore, once alive and thriving, now a blackened carcass amidst the ash. He bent down, his gaze fixed on the body. Hesitation gripped him as he stared at the burnt flesh. It was unrecognizable. His stomach growled from hunger, yet the sight of the burnt meat turned his stomach. Was it edible? But hunger gnawed at him, sharp and relentless. He had no choice. The thought of consuming anything left in the wake of such destruction felt almost wrong, but the emptiness inside him screamed for nourishment. His fingers trembled as he took a piece of the meat now softened by the fire. It was slightly burnt, but something about it had changed. The heat from the flames had broken down its fibers, made it tender. With a deep breath, he brought it to his mouth. The first bite was filled with doubt, a mix of reluctance and necessity. The taste, though, was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The meat was no longer tough, but easier to chew, and it had a deep smoky flavor that lingered on his tongue. It was still strange, still raw with uncertainty, but somehow it was better. The fire had transformed it. He chewed slowly, feeling the warmth of the fire still in the meat, its smoke wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. The hesitation faded as the realization hit him. This was not just food. This was survival. He ate again, and then again, feeling the satisfaction of nourishment begin to settle in his gut. The fire hadn't just destroyed, it had given him something new, something unexpected. As he looked around, he saw others approaching, some from his group, some from neighboring tribes. They, too, had witnessed the destruction. They hesitated, uncertain, as they saw him eating the burnt meat. They hesitated, standing at a distance, unsure of what to make of it. The sight of him eating the burnt meat was unnerving. The fire had turned it black, and yet there he was, chewing and swallowing with an unsettling satisfaction that only seemed to grow with each bite. The others exchanged looks, silent and unsure. Was this safe? Could it be eaten? The rawness of the moment hung in the air, thick with suspicion. The man, however, seemed to have no doubts. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. With an air of casual confidence, he turned to the others and spoke. "It's really good, you know. You should try it," he said, his voice calm, but there was a spark of excitement in it, an almost childlike enthusiasm at his discovery. He offered the charred meat to the nearest person holding it out, his face glowing with an eagerness that seemed almost too much for the others to take in. At this, the others couldn't help but notice. One by one, they came closer, drawn by the irresistible allure of the boy's newfound enthusiasm. They approached cautiously at first, their movements hesitant, their eyes never quite leaving the meat. The man, still watching, held out the next piece, smiling now, as if he had finally unlocked the secret. "Try it. It's better than you think," he said again, his voice more reassuring now, as if his certainty could break the last barriers of their doubt. They too tried it, their expressions filled with surprise. The taste was undeniably better, the meat easier to chew, more flavorful. Word spread quickly. Soon all of them were gathered around, each taking a piece, each sharing in the discovery. And there they were, gathered around the fire before now, all eating together. The flames flickered, casting long shadows over the faces of the people who, just hours ago, had been unsure of what the future held. The fire, once a force of destruction, had become a force of transformation. The meat, once inedible and tough, was now tender and flavorful. What had been a tragedy had turned into a gift, a new way to eat, to survive, to live. The fire had changed everything, and in that change, a new chapter had begun for these early humans.